So to construct the level C confidence interval for the proportion P1 minus P2, we're going to use P1 hat minus P2 hat as an unbiased estimator. Okay. So as an unbiased estimator of the difference in population proportions. Okay, so you will recall a confidence interval is given as our estimate plus or minus the margin of error. And so, in other words, our statistic plus or minus the critical value times, in this case, we are going to use, times your standard deviation of the statistic. Okay, so when we plug this in, our statistic is P1 hat minus P2 hat plus or minus our critical value times, and in this case we are going to use the standard error, so P1 hat times 1 minus P1 hat over N1 plus P2 hat times 1 minus P2 hat over N2. And so, as I said, this is the standard error because we're using the statistic instead of the parameter. And you'll recall that Z star is the upper critical value for confidence level C. Okay, let's have a look at an example now. So as part of the Pew Internet and American Life project, researchers conducted 2 surveys in late 2009. The first survey asked a random sample of 800 teens about their use of social media and the Internet. A second survey posed similar questions to a random sample of 2,253 U.S. adults. In these 2 studies, 73% of teens and 47% of adults said that they used social networking sites. Use these results to construct and interpret a 95% confidence interval for the difference between the proportion of all U.S. teens and adults who use social networking sites. Okay, so what were the key things here? We have that it is a random sample. We have 800 teens, and we have a random sample of 2,253 U.S. adults. We have 73% of the teens, 47% of the adults, and we are looking at a 95% confidence interval for the difference. Okay, so that's the key word there, the difference between the proportions. So we know that we're dealing with a true proportion test. So population number 1 will be the teens. Population number 2 will be the adults. So P1 hat is 0.73, N1 is 800, P2 hat is 0.47, N2 is 2,253, and we want a 95% confidence interval. So once again, we're going to get into the habit and stay there with doing state, plan, do, conclude. So state. If conditions are met, we will construct a two-sample. So, start again. If conditions are met, we will construct a two-sample 95% confidence interval for the difference in the proportion of internet use between teens and adults. And once again, first population is teens, second population is adults. For plan, in our plan we need to check our conditions. So we need to verify that things are random, and both samples were randomly selected. As stated, they were both random samples. Independent. The populations are independent. And it is reasonable to assume there are more than 8,000 teens. And 22,530 adults in the United States. We have satisfied the 10% condition. And our last condition is normal. And here we need to check that n times p and n times 1 minus p is greater than 10. So 800 times 0.73 equals 584. This is for P1. And 800 times 1 minus 0.73 is 216. For the second population, or second sample, 2253 times 0.47 equals 1059. 2253 times 1 minus 0.47 is 1194. All are greater than 10. So we can assume normality in our sampling distribution. For our do, we will be doing a 95% confidence level. And so we will be doing on our calculator stat tests 2prop zint. Okay, so I've done stats test and the 2prop zint. We need to go down to, I believe it is B. There we go. And enter. Now, here they are asking for X1. You'll note that that is what we got when we did our normal test. So you can, if you've already calculated it, you can punch in, or you can actually punch in 800 times 0.73. Now, one thing you need to look out for, and I'm going to redo this one, for X2, oops, where was I here? We can type in 2253 times 0.47, and you'll see we get a non-integer number. So you do need to make sure, if you're typing it in like this, that you go back and change those to integers, so it's 1059. If you don't use an integer, you will get an error code. We've entered in N1 and X1, N1, X2, N2, the C level, and then we will calculate. And you can see that we get our 2prop Z interval right there. It reiterates our sample probabilities and our sample sizes so that we can confirm what we had. So our 95% confidence interval from here is, as we got, 0.22293 to 0.29699. And to conclude, we are 95% confident that the interval (0.223 to 0.297) contains the true difference in the proportion of U.S. teens and adults who use social networking. Alternatively, we could say that we are 95% confident that 22.3% to 29.7% more U.S. teens than U.S. adults use social networking.